So the first question I had, well, I have a lot, but the first one I had really was specifically about the choice to focus on the craft, the craftsmanship, and why you chose to tell that story, which is essentially a love story, through this art.
Well, I chose to tell through this art for various reasons. When I started thinking the character of Halim, it wasn't. I never thought at the beginning that he would become a craftsman, a malam, like he is in the film. Except that I had grown up with this beautiful kaftan that I had seen my mother wear over the years. She had a lot, but there was this particular one that she used to wear on big occasions, and it was identical to the one that you see in the film, except that it's black and it's got the same beautiful intricate embroidery. And every time I'd see her, it really marked my youth and my childhood and my adolescence, basically. I have all these souvenirs of her going off to weddings, to big events, wearing this kaftan. And I always dreamt of the day I would become a woman myself and be able to wear this kaftan, except that it was too big for me then. I was a little girl. I would try it on every time, and so I really had this relationship with this garment and with her and this garment. And she had explained to me how it had been made, all the time it had taken, the personal investment, the love it had been made with as well, because it really takes a lot of, you give a lot of yourself when you're making such a garment, speaking of the Maryam, obviously. And so it fascinated me. And the day that she gave it to me, the day that it fit me and she actually gave it to me, for me it was a beautiful feeling, because I really had the feeling that there was such a transmission through that garment. I had the feeling I was wearing a part of her life, a part of her souvenirs on me, basically. That she was also, her life was literally part of who I was, which was obviously, but now it was a different emotion. And I also had the feeling that it was very charged, this garment, charged also with all that craftsman had put into it, all the hours of work, all the dedication. Many years later, I found out that this was a dying craft. That today, ma'allims such as Halim are disappearing one after another, and that their craft is not being transmitted anymore, because we live in a world where everything goes too fast, where I don't think we value the same things that we did before, where we're used to consuming and moving on to what's next. And that's something that profoundly touches me, because I think there is so much beauty in items like these that are that have a heritage, that have a history. And so when I started really thinking about this character, he became unconsciously, we said it wasn't something I reflected on, but he became a master craftsman.
Well, that's the thing. There's such a beautiful attention to detail in the film. Loads of close-ups of the artist at work. Really, did you watch a Maryam work? Did you follow someone and watch him do this?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time with Maryams, watching them work, just listening to their stories as well, immersing them myself in their world and their universe, because I needed to understand also. And I was very moved by a few that had told me very touching stories. I remember one Maryam telling me that he would prefer working for free than not working at all, than not being a Maryam, that he could work for free as long as he continued his craft. Another one that told me with tears in his eyes that two of his of other Maryams that were working in his store had just left because they weren't making enough money. So one of them had started selling eggs in the market, and the other one had started selling des légumes, vegetables, basically. And that what they were capable of making was of such beauty, and that they were not going to be able to transmit. For 20 years, he had not found an apprentice, because the young generation is just not interested.
So that's what I found really beautiful about the film. It celebrated just human relationships and love, but also this long-standing traditional craftsmanship, which I found beautiful. I wanted to also ask a little bit, and I'm kind of moving away from the love story because I really wanted to ask this, but why did you choose to set it in? It's set in Salé, isn't it, in Morocco? Why the location?
Salé has a long tradition of a traditional craftsmanship. It is one of the most ancient medinas in Morocco. carrying this craft. And still today, you find a lot of Malims working in Saleh. That was part of the reason. Another part of the reason is that the Medina of Saleh I find extremely inspiring. It is a Medina that is close to the ocean, yet you do not see the ocean. And this, for me, was also part of my characters of, this whole... I really wanted to concentrate on the intimacy, really be able to talk about their interiority and all these things that sometimes they could not do as well. And with Halim, I mean, he lives next to the ocean. He smells the ocean, he hears the ocean. He does not see the ocean on an everyday basis. I wanted us to be also there with him at that moment.
Thank you very much. I mean, this is perhaps an obvious question, and you've answered quite a few times, but I imagine a lot of the audience here might not know. But can you tell us a bit more about the starting point for the actual love story in the film? What gave you the idea to explore that?
What gave me what triggered the writing actually was a man I met in the Medina in Casablanca as I was scouting for my previous film Adam, and there was an opening scene where I needed a certain I needed a store for this opening scene, and so as I was scouting, I met this man. And I was very touched by all the things I felt this man was not saying about himself, about his life. I felt that he somehow had to put on a kind of show in his neighborhood because it's a very conventional, very traditional place that he lived in, and that he was obliged to be basically somebody he was not. That's what I felt. Maybe I was wrong. But he made me feel that way. And I never asked him any personal question about his life. I went to see him quite a few times because he was a very touching man and we spoke a lot. But I didn't feel it was my place to ask him anything personal. But I realized afterwards, I went on to shooting my previous film, and he was still there. And I realized afterwards that it was because he brought back to life a lot of souvenirs from my youth. I grew up in Tangier in the north of Morocco, and it's true that I had seen from afar a lot of couples that had been married just in order to keep a certain kind of social facade. Couples that for some had good relationships, others less. But in any case, it was just this facade, that I had always seen coming again and again. And when I met this man, I had a feeling that there was something, that all of a sudden there was some flesh, basically. He was flesh and bone. I could feel things. So basically, he triggered an emotion. And that emotion is what made me want to start writing. It triggered a need for writing, basically, for exploring this character. And in exploring him, obviously, I started exploring his wife, what a wife in such a situation would feel, what the relationship was made of, what love was made of. And I think that love is an extremely, extremely complex emotion. We have the tendency to simplify it, to want to simplify it for various reasons. But for me, it was really about being able to delve into this relationship and explore all these different facets.
Yeah, because there's a sense, and I'm sure maybe other people watching this film just now have felt that love operates on different levels in this film. It's not just a simple love story. It's different types of love and different types of relationships between the three main characters. And you mentioned Adam, so I wanted to ask you. Obviously, Lubna Zabal is in Adam as well, and has now been cast in Blue Caftan and gives a wonderful performance. I wanted to ask you about Saleh Bakri. Why did you choose to cast him? Because he's a Palestinian actor, and he's very well known, and from a well-known acting dynasty. Actually, his father Muhammad Bakri is very famous as well. And I wanted to know why you thought of him for the character.
Well, I opened the casting quite largely. At the beginning, I started casting essentially in Morocco. And when I did not find the Halim I had imagined, I opened the casting abroad. The most difficult part for me when I'm making a film is the moment when I move on to the casting, because I have such an intimate relationship with my characters as I'm writing. It's really an immersive process for me. It's a very emotional, very immersive process. It's very intense. And when I'm done with the writing and I feel that I have to, when I actually have to start looking for my actors and actresses, it's a very, very challenging moment emotionally for me. So as I was writing, I wrote with Lubna Zabal in mind, so I knew that Mina was going to be Lubna. That was obvious for me from the very start. But For Saleh and Ayoub, it was a completely different story. The casting was open. What touched me with Saleh before I even met him was what I felt through his glance, basically, this humanity that is in his eyes. And I had imagined the character of Halim. I really imagined Halim as a man with so much humanity. So when I met this humanity in Saleh's eyes, I looked for meeting him, for learning more about him, for seeing his films, and that's how it really began.
And can you tell us a bit more about the dialect? Because I was curious to see whether if I didn't know he was Palestinian, would I pick up on the fact that he's not natively Moroccan? And of course, the dialect's different, the accent's different. How did you work on that together?
Oh, we worked on that in advance for a long time. It was extremely important for me because it's true that the authenticity of the character is something that for me is very important. And Saleh was aware of that. So we worked before he came to Morocco, even with a coach. You know, the advantage in the film is that it's very written. The dialogues are very written. I don't like improvising, so it wouldn't be like on the set. I wouldn't decide, okay, we're going to add 3 more, 4 more lines. No, everything is really very written. So he had his lines in advance, and we worked beforehand, before he even came to Morocco. And then he came to Morocco as well, and we worked more on his dialect in Morocco. So there was a lot of work on the dialect.
And out of sheer curiosity, what language did you speak between yourselves? Did you speak Arabic, French, English?
It was a mix. It was a mix because with Lubna speaks French as well. Lubna is Moroccan, living in Belgium. She speaks Moroccan and French, but essentially French. So we spoke English, French, Arabic. Ayoub speaks Arabic, so it was a real mix of languages between us.
Thank you very much. I'm aware that a lot of people might have questions for you, so I'd rather give them a chance to speak. We have a roving mic, so if anyone has any questions, thoughts, comments, we're very lucky to have Maryam here with us to answer them. Yes, please. We've got a question in the audience. A mic is just coming to you.
I was very curious about the collaboration you had with the cinematographer. So how much of the shots was included in the script and how much of it was improvised when you were shooting, because it was really beautiful and so intricate. So I was just curious about the collaboration.
Thanks. No, nothing is improvised, actually. When I shoot, it's always very written. When I write, it's always very visual as well. As I'm writing my script, it's always, the colors are there, the textures are there. It's just really, really very, very visual. So as I'm preparing for my film, I spend a lot of time preparing my working on the design, on the set design. I spend a lot of time working on the costumes as well, and with my cinematographer on the shoots, on the light. This is extremely important for me to prepare in advance, because it's not that I don't like improvisation. It's just that as I write, it's very specific, and I'm open to new things, but generally they come as I'm preparing. It doesn't hardly comes afterwards. But Virginie Surdej, the cinematographer, is an extremely, extremely talented woman. She's wonderful, and she knows exactly what I'm looking for in every shot. She knew from the start. I mean, she worked with me as well on my last film, Adam. We've known each other for a lot of years, and she knows exactly what I'm looking for. And I really wanted the light in this film to be a vehicle of the emotion as well. I wanted us to be in this apartment, because at the very end we hardly leave the apartment, but at the same time for it to be full of light. And we are talking about this woman's death, but I also wanted it to be luminous, her to be luminous. So this is all very important. And then there's the clair-obscur as well that I like working on a lot. I'm very inspired by paintings. I love Caravaggio, for example. Vermeer. This is all very visual, and that's why for me it's almost like painting. And I like having my painting beforehand and being able to choose every little touche, basically.
Okay, thank you so much for the film. My question is actually very simple, and I feel a bit embarrassed to ask such a simple question. But what was your thinking behind designing the story around a love triangle? And could you speak more about the role of the woman as a kind of conduit between the two men, or was that not really how you approached it at all?
What I really wanted was to explore the complexity of this emotion of love. Like I was saying before, I have the feeling that we much too often try to simplify things, to put emotions in boxes, to draw very clear lines, and I think that it's not the case with such an emotion. I think we are all complex beings, and we generally live complex situations. And when you see a couple like Halim and Mina from the outside, you can simplify what you believe to be the relationship. But once you're inside with them in their own house, in their everyday, in their routine, you get to know them better. You understand how complex the relationship between them can be. And what love is as well. I wanted to question love, because at the end of the day, what is love? Is there one definition of love? I don't believe there is one definition of love. I believe there are so many. I believe, like I was saying before as well, love has so many different faces, so many facets. And love can also evolve. Love can change. Even when Youssef comes into this house, there's something almost of a family kind of feeling. It's almost like if he at the moment becomes Mina's son. There's something where even different types of love, for me, the boundaries become a little bit more, how can I say, porous. And I think that's the beauty of love as well. And for also what love is for me is what you're ready to do for love out of for the person you love. And that's what Mina discovers, because she doesn't even know, you know. I think love is something that helps these characters transcend themselves. When she decides to do what she does for her husband, it's out of love, for no other reason. She stays in this relationship because she loves him. He is with her because he loves her. And a lot of times we think that it's not possible for two people like Mina and Halim. He is gay, she is not. How can they love each other? Well, yes, I believe they can, in a different manner.
Thank you. And I'm glad someone brought up the role of the woman as well in this dynamic. I think it's very important. It's very well portrayed as well. It's very subtle in the film.
For me, the pivotal line in the film was when she said to her husband that I'm proud to be your wife, and the line before that, which I can't remember. And it was almost at that moment, having already asked the lover for his forgiveness for lying to him, it was almost at that moment the whole film coalesced, and she transcended from the present to the future and almost gave her love to the male lover. Now, in that, for you, was that like the pivotal point of the film, where suddenly it moved from sort of the present to the future? And with the line and the one before it, which I can't remember, did that just sort of come to you, or did you have to really craft it?
No, I didn't craft it. When I write, it's true that I write under very particular emotion. I never know where I'm going. I have the feeling I follow my characters as I'm writing. I never know where the next scene is taking me. I really discover my scenes as I'm writing them, and I'm haunted by them as I'm writing my scripts. It's just, you know, it's never something that I think of in advance. I never say, okay, I want to take the film here or I want to take the film there. I just let myself really get taken where I believe the characters need to take me. And the line before that one is well, the one you say is don't be afraid to love. Which is the line you said? I'm sorry.
Don't be afraid of love.
No, she says you're the most. Tu es l'homme le plus pur que j'ai connu in French. You're the purest of men. Yeah. And I'm proud to have been your wife. For me, that was extremely important because Halim needs to hear that at that moment. Halim has always been feeling ashamed of who he is. And she wants to leave behind her a man that loves himself, that accepts himself, and that is proud of who he is. And for me, the fact that she tells him that is going to help him be proud of who he is, because the woman that he has loved all these years feels that way about him. I think for me that's essential for building the Halim that's going to be able to go on after her. And this is part of the transmission as well, because you're talking also about what she gives this young man. For me, it's also about transmission. It's about transmitting love. It's about how we continue going on even after we die, thanks to what we leave behind us. And now she's leaving behind her this possibility of love for Halim, for being the man he wants to be, for loving the way he wants to live, freely. Because in her eyes, he is pure. He is beautiful, and that's what matters to her. But she has to go a long way for this as well. I mean, it's not easy for her. She has her own interior journey that begins as well, really takes off at the moment where her disease starts to kick in. And for me, that's what's I wanted to explore as well was mortality. What happens when we realize that, you know, our days are counted, and this finitude. I think that when we are aware of our end, when we're really aware of our end, we can be very, very courageous. We can be, I think we're just more conscious of what is essential in our lives.
There was also a lovely mirror between the doctor saying to the husband, "You must now let her go," and then in those two lines, she letting go of her husband. And can I just ask a cultural question? So this is somebody who doesn't really know much about the Arab world. That in the culture in which all the actors or the film is set, what, from my perspective, not knowing much about it, it seems quite a sort of a courageous film to write. But I mean, I don't know if that is or not. And was there any aspect of that, of thinking or being that it was something which was quite courageous in that environment, or is it just something which is completely, I can't think of the word to say?
No, for me it was necessary to talk about these characters as well, to have characters such as Halim and Youssef exist on the big screen, because I mean it is illegal to be gay in Morocco. Same-sex relationships are illegal, and although it isn't a law that is always practiced implemented, it still is. It's not that it isn't; it is implemented, but. The weight of this society's vision, society's perception, that is what is very important. That's what keeps people in such situations from being able to exist openly, to be themselves, to just love freely. And for me, this is also, above all, a film about love, about, you know, the freedom to love who you want to love, how you want to love them, regardless of where you live in the world. And it's about, you know, being able to do so even in societies where it is hard because it's not accepted. That's why Halim feels such shame. That's why he's torn inside.
Yeah, that moment that Nigel's just described was really profound, and I thought it was really connected to the "Don't be afraid of love" that gave the permission onto that from that. But the bit that really that built up into it was when he put the robe on her, and I felt like that hit me so deeply, more than the other parts, and I can't even express why that is, but I would love to hear more about that. Yeah, but I work with textiles, so that's for me is very special heritage things, so probably why. But I'd love your words. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, when he decides to put this blue caftan on her, it's an immense act of courage, because this is breaking one of the biggest, I wouldn't call it taboos because I hate that word, but it's just breaking, it's one of those social rules that you're not allowed to break. It's one of those social traditions that just nobody breaks. You have to be buried in a certain manner. It's not written anywhere, but nobody dares do the opposite, however painful it might be. So now, by doing this, basically for me, he's just showing his courage to her as well, and he's burying her in the most beautiful way he could dream of burying her, and the way she would love to be buried. So for me, this is one of the biggest acts of courage that an act of love that Halim could have for Mina. But yeah, this is one of the biggest as well. It's extremely, extremely hard to do something like he did. You know, that's just I mean, in the Arab world, it's just something you don't, it's a tradition that you don't question. And that's the thing as well, is that, I mean, for me, I think tradition can be something extremely beautiful. That's why also I wanted to talk about this craftsman tradition, about this tradition of Maryam. I think there are some beautiful traditions that we have to celebrate, that we have to protect, that we have to keep alive, because they are part of who we are, our DNA. They carry part of our heritage. And it's beautiful to keep them going, to keep them alive. In the same manner, I believe that there are other traditions that need to be pushed, that need to be questioned, that need to be changed, that need to be challenged. And so there is place in the world, I imagine, for both, for the old ways and for the new ways, for traditions that, you know, still define us, and for other traditions that have to evolve. It's just being able to question that which we don't generally question.
Thanks. Actually, you answered my question. It was about, because obviously they're very attached to the tradition of the craft, but then they seem to be a very modern couple, and they have this very modern love triangle, which really struck me. So I'm going to ask another question that's a bit more like curiosity about the craft. Is it only men that know how to do that in Morocco, or do some women learn it now? Or, yeah.
No, there's different aspects of the craft. Some are more women's and some are more men's. For example, with I don't know if you noticed, there's a woman that comes and brings the buttons. This is mainly women that make the buttons. There are certain embroideries that are more women's embroideries. It's just always been like that. And depending upon the regions as well. Some things are more for men, some other are for women. But this kind of work is more done by men.
I was really touched by the tenderness that we could see both in Halim and between Halim and Youssef, but also between Halim and Mina. And I think really for me, there was something interesting around masculinity and the way you portray these two men who are so soft, so tender, so very different, I think, from how I see many men in the Arab world. And I just wanted to know, what your thoughts were. Like, was this intentional? Around the idea of masculinity.
I believe there isn't one Arab man or one Arab woman. I believe that's really it. I believe that we really have to look at the individuals, and that each individual has their own story, has their own experiences, and has their own personality, and carries, you know, their own truth. And yes, Halim and Youssef are quite tender, like you say, but they're quite tender in this situation. Youssef is a fighter. Youssef has grown up on his own since he was 8 years old. He has faced the world. He has a lot of things that we don't necessarily know. That doesn't make him less tender. It's all about the complexity that I really believe there is behind each being, wherever it is that they be in the world, you know, whether they be Arab or not.
I just wanted to ask about the tangerines and the eggs. I wondered if you had a personal connection to some of the food in the film.
The tangerines and the eggs.
Well, the meals that they cooked for each other.
Oh yeah, he cooks a lot of eggs, but he doesn't know how to do anything else, really. It's because it's true that his wife is the one that's generally cooking in the house until the moment she gets ill, and then he starts cooking for her, and all he knows how to make is eggs, basically. But yeah, with the tangerines, yes. For me, tangerines are very, very symbolic of Mina, because she has this kind of, very pétillante, very bubbly personality. She's outgoing, she's strong, she's I don't know, and their color, there's something about the color of the tangerines that really talks to me regarding to her. So when I wrote this film, as I was writing, the tangerines made their way inside the film. I guess I was writing at the moment when I was eating tangerines. Maybe it was something unconscious, but it's true that as I wrote, they found their place, and I felt every time as we advanced that they were taking on a different role as well regarding her illness, as we move into the film, and she can't leave the house, Halim can't leave the house. These tangerines are starting also to rot. And then when Youssef comes back, he brings all these fresh tangerines again. So there's this breath of fresh air. There's all these new possibilities. There's this things that he brings with him. And then this moment when Halim feeds her as well, just this last taste of the tangerines, for me was essential, in talking about the relationship between them. But the problem is that when I wrote this film, I'm not very good with dates and things. I did not know when was a moment for tangerines. I just knew I needed to have tangerines in the film. And when we were shooting, I realized, as we were preparing, I said, we have to have tangerines and they have to be ripe. And they said, well, we have to find out if it's the season for tangerines. And I was lucky enough that the season for tangerines was just beginning. And then because I tried to shoot chronologically as much as possible for my characters, for being able to stay emotionally with them as well, where they're meant to be. The tangerines just started because we started shooting in November, and by the time we shot the tangerine scenes, they were really ripe. So I was quite lucky with that, but I was very scared that at a certain moment because I was not going to change them for any other fruit.
So, question around the film's reception or even the film screening in Morocco. Can you tell us more about that?
I'm very happy to say that the film is opening on the 7th of June in Morocco, nationally and all cinemas and stuff. And yes, it's true that it was complicated. I mean, it could have been complicated. It was not complicated. We got the money from the Moroccan Cinema Center. We applied with the script. I defended my film. We got the first funding for the film from the Moroccan Cinema Center, and they read the script. So I believe that there is a real desire to be able to speak about certain things that we don't necessarily speak about, and to be able to open some des brèches, to open some new ways, through art, through cinema. And so yes, the film was supported, and later the film was shown to this independent commission that gave it its visa for being screened in cinemas without even asking for anything to be cut off. I mean, I wouldn't have cut anything anyway, but yeah, the film is screening, and I'm very happy and very excited for the moment that it's going to open in Morocco.
How long did it take you to shoot the film from start to finish? I know, and also how long did it take you to write the script as well?
I'm really not good with dates. Really, my husband, which is also the producer and also wrote the script with me, was here a moment ago. He would be he would tell you that, but I know that in the writing it took me more or less, I think it must have been a year for the writing, and then then it's complicated because I write on Angers, like I really sit and write when I feel the need to write, and I can't stop myself when I'm writing. And then there's little adjustments, so that all in all, it would have taken a year, I think, more or less. And then the shooting was, I think it was like around 7 weeks shooting, and then of course there's a whole pre-production, post-production that took a lot longer.
I don't know if this is really a question, but I just wanted to say that there were some really joyful parts of the film. The bit where Mina and Halim are kind of taking the mickey out of the customer. And the bit with the shoulder dancing, I just loved the shoulder dancing. And also, I suppose, one of the scenes that's really stayed with me is in the cafe, when they go to the cafe and she's smoking and jumping up for the goal. And of course, at the end, you see the two of them at the cafe again. But could you say something about that first cafe scene? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Mina has been walking by this cafe for so many years and never set a foot in it. And it's true that now there is this urgency as well, because she knows she's leaving. She feels it in her body. She feels her days are counted now. And she wants to put Halim as well, also in situations where he's uncomfortable for him. I mean, it's also just to make him, she realizes basically little by little she needs to shake him up, because she has protected him so much during all these years out of love. She's been so protective of him. So she also intentionally wants to put him in these kind of situations, but she also just wants to be there and do something that she's always wanted to do and has not done, And yeah, it's true that, it's the opposite team that scores, but she doesn't even care, She doesn't know at the beginning because she doesn't know anything about football, but even then she doesn't care, She's, with her character, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, I think life is so much about this, I mean, the more we age, I think the more we realize there's all these beautiful things, there's all these moments of laughter, and there's all these things that, will tear us apart and will make us cry, and sometimes they just mix as well, and it's the same thing. One moment you're laughing, one moment you're crying, and it's, I mean, yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid that's the last question we had time for. I want you to give Maryam a big round of applause and a big thank you for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.